Well, turning now to the latest in a Fox 5 I-Team investigation. A house flipping company sells homes, quote, as is. It's much like you might buy a used car.
Now, they do encourage the buyer to get a home inspector to look over the property, but is that really enough to protect you? Fox 5 I-Team reporter Randy Travis returns now with more on his investigation into a company called Jar House. Randy?
Yeah, Russ and Snee, the Jar House company CEO is Zareh Najarian, a 35-year-old Henry County native who was clever enough to start buying cheap foreclosures at the start of the Great Recession. By his estimate, the company has now bought and flipped thousands of properties. Well, here are 3 buyers who want him to buy theirs back.
Buying a home is supposed to be the happiest time, one of the happiest times of your life. And unfortunately, this has been the worst time of our life.
Kayla and Jimmy Bhatt would love to give you a tour of their new Austell home. They suggest you bring your own mask, though.
And we have mold everywhere. We have mold in the walls, in the ceilings.
They're the latest unhappy customers who bought a home from Jar House. The Sandy Springs real estate company says it buys an average of 75 properties every month, sometimes fixes them, then flips them to a new homeowner. All houses sold as is.
Basically assume the worst. We don't want to mislead you. Hire your inspector.
But this Noonan buyer says Jar House never warned him the septic tank system was not functioning properly, even though his lawsuit says Jar House was given just that warning from the previous owner.
Do you feel, Matt, like you were ripped off?
I do, very much so.
And the Sonoya family has to live in the driveway of their new house, squeezed into an RV, because they discovered mold and termite damage hidden in the just been renovated home. They're suing Jar House, accusing the company of choosing to conceal the damage.
They put brand new sheetrock over mold that could not have grown that fast.
I can unequivocally tell you 100%, we did not hide any type of damage.
Zareh Najarian works out of this suite of offices on Roswell Road. He says he hires third-party contractors to do mold remediation on their properties, including that Sonoya home. 2 years ago, the bank foreclosed on an elderly woman whose home had severe water and termite damage. The bank then sold the property to Jar House.
Someone put up some drywall that hid that damage.
Right. I think that's a fair statement. Multiple people could have done all kind of work before we ever touched the property.
He also insists he was under no obligation to warn buyers about septic tank problems at the Noonan house because it was his understanding the system was not seriously damaged. Turns out the new owner says it will cost $60,000 to repair.
Why did the buyer not do their own homework?
So your first visit to the house, you found this?
Yes.
A leaking water heater that had been pouring into the basement of this Austell home. But Jar House promised in writing to fix all the damage if Kayla and Jimmy bought the house, replacing any damaged flooring, subflooring, sheetrock, ceiling tiles, pipes, and any other damage.
You trusted them?
I did. I trusted them.
So 8 months pregnant, the couple moved in. Days later, they said the basement smell grew worse. They pulled down the paneling to discover mold everywhere. Too late for Kayla's wedding dress, which she had stored in a basement closet.
The problem was not the flooring. The smell was because the mold was down here. It hadn't gone away.
She says they've been fighting for 2 years with Jar House.
We thought the matter was resolved. Again, we hadn't heard from the buyers until just now. Who knows what has happened in the past 2 years.
Well, we know a leak happened before they bought the house, and you promised to fix all the damage to it.
As soon as you buy a house, anything can go wrong with it, right?
There's a difference between getting a house that as is and a house like this.
Is it fair to think a home inspector can find mold or termite damage behind new drywall? We decided to ask someone who should know.
Joe Griggs is the former president of the Georgia Association of Home Inspectors.
How fair is it to expect a home inspector to find all the problems in a house?
Not likely, and probably won't ever happen.
He says fresh paint can mask the smell of mold.
Are you worried that some buyers may be getting fooled when they buy a house as is?
We can't look behind the walls. We can't cut into walls.
If the home inspector can't see behind the walls, are we expected to see behind the walls? Those walls were never exposed to us.
He says Jar House will start its own construction wing to better control what work gets done for future rehabs. But he's unapologetic about what may have happened in the past.
We accept our responsibility that, hey, Georgia is a buyer beware state. Do your own due diligence.
It's heartbreaking. Like, people are suffering because of this. And people need to know, like, this isn't okay. This isn't right. People can't do this.
Well, as for those homeowners forced to live in an RV in their driveway, Najarian has offered to buy back the house plus give them $10,000. They have turned down that offer, though, saying it does not cover what they've had to go through since buying the house in May. So that lawsuit continues.
How about that? Well, I'm sure people were watching tonight. They saw that home inspector say that they can't find everything. That's pretty scary. So what's their recommendation for people who might buy something as is?
Well, he says that they do have a device, Russ, called a pin meter, and they can poke a little hole through the drywall and see if there's moisture behind there. But they have to have sort of probable cause. There has to be some sort of moisture on the outside. Otherwise, they're poking holes everywhere.
Sure.
So they say to look around and make sure that you know what the moisture level might be on some of the walls. But also, he says, don't discount the moldiness or the mustiness of a house when you walk in for the very first time. Don't say that, oh, it's because the air conditioning is not running or it's been boarded up for a while and nobody's been in there, because that also could be a big sign that there's mold in there. He also suggests, this is a good idea, to check with neighbors. A neighbor might be able to tell you more about what's going on in a house, especially one that's been foreclosed on, at least to give you a roadmap to then hand to the home inspector. The home inspector can then look at those particular items.
All right, you got to do your homework.
Yep, you sure do.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Randy.